Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a time there dwelt on the outskirts of a large forest a poor woodcutter and his wife and 2 children. The boy was called Hansel, and the girl Gretel. He had always little enough to live on, and once, when there was a great famine in the land, he couldn't even provide them with daily bread. One night, as he was tossing about in bed, full of cares and worry, he sighed and said to his wife, "What's to become of us? How are we to support our poor children now that we have nothing more for ourselves?" "I'll tell you what, husband," answered the woman. "Early tomorrow morning, we'll take the children out into the thickest part of the wood. There we shall light a fire for them and give them each a piece of bread. Then we'll go on to our work and leave them alone. They won't be able to find their way home, and thus we shall be rid of them." Pinch. "No, wife," said her husband, "that I won't do. How can I find it in my heart to leave my children alone in the wood?" There's a big wolf out there. "Oh, you fool," she said. "Then we must all 4 die of hunger, and you may just as well go and plan the boards for our own coffins." And she left him no peace till he consented. As it happens. "But I can't help but feel sorry for the poor children," added the husband. The children, too, had not been able to sleep for hunger, and had heard what their stepmother had said to their father. Gretel wept bitterly and spoke to Hansel. "Now our time is up with us." "No, no, Gretel," said Hansel. "Don't fret yourself. I'll be able to find a way to escape. No fear." And when the old people had fallen asleep, he got up, slipped on his little coat, opened the back door, and stole out. The moon was shining brightly, and the white pebbles which lay in front of the house glittered like little bits of silver. Hansel bent down and filled his pockets with as many of them as he could cram in. And then he went back and said to Gretel, "Be comforted, my little sister, and go to sleep. God will not desert us." And he lay down in bed again. At daybreak, even before the sun was up, the woman came and woke the 2 children. "Get up, you lie-a-beds. We're all going to the forest to fetch wood." She gave them each a bit of bread, and said, "There's something for your luncheon, but don't you eat it up before, for that's all you get." Gretel took the bread under her apron, as Hansel had done with the stones as pockets. Then they all set out together on the way to the forest. After they had walked for a little, Hansel stood still and looked back at the house, and this maneuver he repeated again and again. His father observed him and said, "Hansel, what are you gazing at there? Why do you always remain behind? Take care, and don't lose your footing." "Oh, father," said Hansel, "I'm looking back at my white kitten which was sitting on the roof, waving me a farewell." The woman exclaimed, "What a donkey you are! That isn't your kitten, that's the morning sun shining on the chimney." But Hansel had not looked back to the kitten, but had always dropped one of the white pebbles out of his pockets on the path. When they had reached the middle of the forest, the father said, "Now, children, go and fetch a lot of wood, and I'll light up a fire that you may not feel cold." Hansel and Gretel heaped up brushwood until they had made a pile nearly the size of a small hill. The brushwood was set fire to, and when the flames leaped high, the woman said, "Now lie down at the fire, children, and rest yourselves. "We're going into the forest to cut down wood. When we've finished, we'll come back and fetch you." Hansel and Gretel sat down beside the fire, and at midday ate their little bits of bread. They heard the strokes of an axe, so they thought their father was quite near. But it was no axe they heard, but the bough he tied on a dead tree. And that was blown by the wind. And when they had sat down for a long time, their eyes closed with fatigue, and they fell fast asleep. When they woke at last, it was pitch dark. Gretel began to cry and said, "Why are we ever going to get back out of the woods?" But Hansel comforted her. "Wait a bit," he said, "till the moon is up, then we'll find our way sure enough." And when the full moon had risen, he took his sister by the hand and followed his pebbles, which shone like a new threepenny bits, and showed their path. They walked on to the night, and at daybreak reached their father's house again. They knocked at the door, and when the woman opened it, she exclaimed, "You naughty children! What time you have slept in the wood? We thought you were never going to come back." But the father rejoiced, for his conscience had reproached him for leaving his children behind by themselves. Not long afterward, there was again a great dearth in the land, and the children heard their mother address their father thus in bed one night. "Everything is eaten up once more. We only have half a loaf in this house, and when that's done, it's all up with us. The children must be got rid of. We'll lead them deeper into the woods this time, so that they won't be able to find their way back out again. There's no other way of saving ourselves." Yeah. The man's heart smote him heavily, and he thought, surely it would be better to share the last bite with one's children. But his wife wouldn't listen to his arguments, and did nothing but scold and reproach him. If the man yields once he's done for, and so, because he had given in the first time, he was forced to do so the second. But the children were awake, and had heard the conversation. When the old people were asleep, Hansel got up and wanted to go out and pick up some pebbles again, as he had done the first time. But the woman had barred the door, and Hansel couldn't get out. But he consoled his little sister, and said, "Don't cry, Gretel, and sleep peacefully, for God is sure to help us out." At early dawn the woman came and made her children get up. They received their bit of bread, but it was even smaller than the first time. On the way to the wood, Hansel crumbled it in his pocket, and every few minutes he stood still and dropped a piece of crumbs on the ground. "Hansel, what are you stopping looking about for?" said the father. "I'm looking back at the little pigeon who was sitting on the roof waving me a farewell," answered Hansel. "Fool!" said the wife. "That isn't your pigeon, it's the morning sun glittering in the chimney." But Hansel gradually threw all his crumbs on the path, and the woman led the children still deeper into the forest, farther than they had ever been in their lives before. Then a big fire was lit again, and the mother said, "Just sit down there, children, and if you're tired you can sleep a bit. We're going into the forest to cut down wood, and in the evening, when we're finished, we'll come back to fetch you." At midday, Gretel divided her bread with Hansel, for he had strewn his all along the path. Then they fell asleep, and evening passed away, but nobody came to the poor children. They didn't awake until it was pitch dark, and Hansel comforted his sister, saying, "Only wait, Gretel, till the moon rises. Then we shall see the breadcrumbs I scattered along the path, and they will show us the way back to the house." When the moon appeared, they got up, and they found no crumbs. For the thousands of birds that fly about the woods and fields had picked them all up. Never mind, said Hansel and Gretel. You'll see, we'll find a way out. But all the same, they did not. They wandered about the whole night, and the next day, from morning till evening, but they could not find a path out of the woods. They were very hungry, too, for they had nothing to eat but a few berries they found growing on the ground. And at last they were so tired that their legs refused to carry them any further. So they lay down under a tree and fell fast asleep. On the third morning, after they had left their father's house, they set out about their wandering again, only got deeper and deeper into the wood. And now they felt as if they would never come out as soon as if they did not find help soon, they must soon perish. At midday, they saw a beautiful snow-white bird sitting on a branch, which sang so sweetly that they stopped still and listened to it. And when the song was finished, it flapped its wings and flew on in front of them. They followed it and came to a little house, on the roof of which it perched. And when they came quite clear, they saw that the cottage was made of bread and roofed with cakes. With the window was made from transparent sugar. Now we'll set to it, said Hansel, and have a regular blowout. I'll eat a bit of the roof, and you, Gretel, can eat some of the window, in which you'll find a sweet morsel. Hansel stretched out his hand and broke off a little of the roof to see what it was like, and Gretel went to the casement and began to nibble at it. Thereupon a shrill voice called out from the room inside. Nibble, nibble, little mouse, who's nibbling at my house? The children answered, "'Tis heaven's own child, the tempest wild," and went on eating, without putting themselves about. Hansel, who was thoroughly appreciated the roof, tore it down a bit of it, while Gretel pushed the whole round window pane, and sat down the better to enjoy it. Suddenly the door opened, and an ancient dame, leaning on a staff, hobbled out. Hansel and Gretel were so terrified that they let what they had in their hands fall. But the old woman shook her head and said, "Oh, no, no, you dear children, who led you here? Just come in and stay with me. No ill shall befall you." She took them both by the hand and led them into the house, and laid a most sumptuous dinner before them. Milk and sugared pancakes with apples and nuts. After they had finished, the two little white beds were prepared for them, and when Hansel and Gretel lay down on them, they felt as if they had gone to heaven. Yes, my sweet. The old woman had appeared to be most friendly, but she was really an old witch who had waylaid the children, and had only built the little red house in order to lure them in. When anyone came into her power, she killed, cooked, and ate them, and held a regular feast day for the occasion. Now, witches have red eyes, and cannot see far, but like beasts, they have a keen sense of smell, and know when human beings pass by, because they stink. When Hansel and Gretel fell into her hands, she laughed maliciously, and said jeeringly, "I've got them now, they shan't escape me." Early in the morning, before the children were awake, she rose up, and when she saw them both sleeping so peacefully, with their round, rosy cheeks, she muttered to herself. That will be a dainty bite. Then she seized Hansel with her bony hand and carried him into the little stable and barred the door on him. He might scream as much as he liked, but it did him no good. Then she went to Gretel and shook her till she woke and cried, Get up, you lazy bones! Fetch water and cook something for your brother. When he's fat, I'll eat him up. Gretel began to cry bitterly, but it was of no use. She had to do what the wicked witch bade her. So the best food was cooked for poor Hansel, but Gretel got nothing but crab shells. Every morning the old woman hobbled out to the stable and cried, Hansel, put out your finger that I may feel if you are getting fat. But Hansel always stretched out a bone, and the old dame, whose eyes were dim, couldn't see it, and thinking it was always Hansel's finger, wondered why he fattened so slowly. When 4 weeks had passed and Hansel still remained thin, she called to the girl. She lost her patience and could wait no longer. Hey, Gretel, she called to the girl. Be quick and get some water. Hansel may be fat or thin. I'm going to kill him tomorrow and cook him. Oh, how the poor little sister sobbed as she carried the water, and how the tears rolled down her cheeks. God, heaven help us now, she cried. If only the wild beasts in the wood had eaten us, then at least we should have died together. Just hold your peace, cried the old hag. It won't help you. Early in the morning, Gretel had to go out and hang up the kettle full of water and light the fire. First we'll bake, said the old dame. I've heated the oven already and kneaded the dough. She pushed Gretel out to the oven, from which a fire flames were already issuing. Creep in, said the witch, and see if it's properly heated, so that we can shove in the bread. For when she had got Gretel in, she meant to close the oven and let the girl bake. She was a brownie. That she might eat her up too. But Gretel perceived her intention and said, I don't know how to do it. I'm done. How do you get in? You silly goose, said the hag. The opening is big enough, see? I could get in myself. And she crawled towards it and poked her head into the oven. Then Gretel gave her a shove that sent her right in, shut the iron door, and drew the bolt. Gracious, how she yelled. It was quite horrible. But Gretel fled, and the wretched old woman was left to perish miserably. Gretel flew straight to Hansel, opened the little stable door, and cried, Hansel, we're free! The old witch is dead! Then Hansel sprang out of the cage like a bird when the door was opened. How they rejoiced and fell on each other's necks, and jumped for joy and kissed one another. As they no longer had any cause for fear, they went into the old hag's house, where they found in every corner of the room boxes of pearls and precious stones. These are even better than pebbles, said Hansel, and crammed his pockets full of them. And Gretel said, I too will have something to bring home, and she filled her aprons full. But now, said Hansel, let's go and get well away from the witch's wood. When they had wandered about for some hours, they came to a big lake. We can't get over, said Hansel. I see no bridge of any sort of kind. Yes, and there's no ferry boat either, answered Gretel. But look, it swims this white duck. I'll ask if she'll help us over. And she called out, Here are 2 children, mournful very, seeing neither a bridge nor ferry. Take us upon your white back, and row us over, quack, quack. The duck swam over towards him, and Hansel got on her back and bade his little sister to sit beside him. "No," answered Gretel, "we should be too heavy a load for the duck. She shall carry us across separately." The good bird did this, and when they were landed safely on the other side and had gone for a while, the wood became very more and more familiar to them, and at length they saw their father's house in the distance. There they set off to run, and bounding across the room fell on their father's neck. The man had not passed a happy hour since he left them in the wood, but the woman had died. Gretel shook out her apron, and all the pearls and precious stones rolled about the room, and Hansel threw down one handful after another from his pockets. Thus all their troubles were ended, and they lived happily ever afterwards. Well, my story is done. See, there runs the little mouse. Anyone who catches it may make it himself a large fur cap out of it.